video. Okay. Yeah, of course I didn't go right into TLA. I wanted to set the scene with a lot of other character select titles. The theme I was going here for was clones, so I found Ryu and Ken. I really want to do Street Fighter 4 Ryu and Evil Ryu, but I could not find a good screenshot of that. I could have done it just by booting up Street Fighter 4, but honestly, Super Turbo works just as well because this is like the original clone character, Ryu versus Ken. There's also Filia and Fukua, and you can't see it here. All the human clones: Scorpion, Human Smoke, Sub Zero, all the ninjas. I think Ermac too. Anyway, this the big one, the big one. Is my stream lagging? I don't know. Anyway,
Usually when designing a fighting game roster, you'll notice that some characters' tools have similarities with another character's tools. Sometimes it can also
maybe
go
here?
to the extreme where
Maybe
you have
here?
a full clone of a base character. And the good general rule of thumb when designing these kinds of characters are that the clone needs to have unique strength that covers a weakness of the base character while sacrificing something in return. Sometimes things don't always go as according to plan though, and you can end up with character overlap where one counterpart is objectively stronger than the other.
I'm so glad that Filia and Fukua just don't have this at all. There's different reasons to play Filia and Fukua. I think Skullgirls is a really, 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 really balanced game. More balanced than Tough Love Arena, ironically. Probably I'm not in the meta as much. I think the I think it's very, very balanced with having all this. Yeah, I think sure, Peacock is strong, sure, Big Band and Annie and whatever, kind of strong. But it's really balanced game. Character overlap just doesn't really exist in Skullgirls because every character is unique from each other. That's the benefit of playing a modern game is that developers actually give a shit. Oh yeah, probably, but what can you do?
And completely outshines them in tournaments. For more modern fighting game titles, you don't get the same degree of character overlap that Scorpion and Human Smoke did in Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, but it can still happen.
Not in Skullgirls, but in Tough Love Arena, yeah. I think the slide was pretty short. Um, I really can't even think of any other modern fighting game with like character overlap. The garlic players will tell you it's garlic pork. Pork just does everything garlic does, but better. The garlic players will say that. But honestly, it gets worse. No, it gets worse. It's not just like Noodle and Rice and pre-depowering. It's Scorpion and Human Smoke that literally have the exact down to the number moves. And Human Smoke is top tier because of the addition of two tools that really, 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 really help. Human Smoke, there's just no reason to play Scorpion basically in UMK3. Goated game nonetheless, but
And
yeah.
there's no better example of character overlap that I can elaborate on better than Rice and Powering Tub of Arena.
Old
Rice
character
didn't get
select,
a
by the way.
personality until the powering patch, and until then Rice was generally regarded as a worse noodle.
Not about the actual voicing I did for this. I want to talk about this character select a little. As you can see, no mystery meat, no secret spice. It'd probably be weird to implement them too, but I actually remember saying on Paul's stream, and I think Amy was there too. I told them, I think this menu is a bit inaccessible to those that are colorblind. Like, sure, maybe there's grayscale differences, but I think that you'd be much better off um, making these the character portraits. Because if I were colorblind, I probably wouldn't see a difference between these two meats too much, and especially in game with the old art. So I think that's where I think Amy said in response to that There's a bit of accessibility issues that kind of need to be addressed in TLA, but we're working on it. And they changed the character select to the portraits, which I really find to be more modern and actually cool. But anyway,
For all
refresher.
the new players in Tough Love Arena, here is a refresher on what Rice used to be. Let me go over normals first. 5L didn't really change that much, but instead of canceling in Whip Splash, you got to cancel in the Multi Slap. It,
Multi-stop was cool. Fine, I'll admit it. I like the swipe cancel and the trample cancel a lot more. In terms of the context of newer Rice and newer Noodle, I think multi-slap was a good trade-off.
it can be used to create space in your 5L block strings, or it can be used as an ender in your SWAT loops. On the surface, Whip doesn't look too different, but the changes are really subtle. It was -7 on block and it had 5 more recovery frames. This made it much more prone to it getting whiff punished, and it also was punishable on block.
Yeah, when I was first testing this for the first time, I noticed yeah, so there's like 5 less recovery frames. That means the extended hurt box recedes a lot longer than it used to. But the more I tried counterpoking this, the more I realized this is an easy counterpoke. This is such an easy counterpoke. And it was possible to just whiff punish this on reaction. Like, so much. Also punishable up close. Doesn't really hurt Rice's mix-ups or anything, or Noodle's mix-ups for that regard, because, lol, they just have that 5L, I guess. And Noodle has close fist, so.
The one thing I can give it though is that the cancel window was much more longer. This allowed for you to be able to RC when you were minus. This was known as future sight.
Okay, so I remembered about Future Sight, and then I think a random day it just occurred to me, what if I can. So the main reason Rice or Noodle would do this is if Beef tries to lemon in response or tries to jump in response, you can already see the startup frames and have way more time to react to it. But what if I did a lemon, they tried to counterpoke it with a 5H and just clip it? That's the intended gameplay. But what I said was, since I'm in the first couple startup frames, what if I Kara canceled it? What if I was already in the lemon startup, but I was allowed to Kara cancel to bait out the whip and actually get a jump in? I couldn't. I don't know why, but I guess I just couldn't. But it was a cool hypothesis, and just know that it doesn't work. I'm sorry.
SWAT was a lot more different than it used to be. Imagine SWAT and swipe fused together. If the anti-air box didn't connect, it would transition into the swipe part of the move. Although you could
Old
cancel that
SWAT.
transition from SWAT into swipe by pressing 5SL. This was known as SWAT cancel, and it's basically today's SWAT.
I pressed two L inputs because yeah, you had like a 6 frame window to do the SWAT cancel because of buffer window and cancel window together. Um, Direction cancels were a much better direction than the empty cancels with the buttons. So I was kind of mashing there because that's like just an old habit.
There's not a lot I can say about teleport, but you have to keep in mind it's in a meta where every character's walk speeds were higher. This made it much easier to punish on reaction.
I think it was also a matter of it going well. Hmm, I forget all the changes that were made to Whip back then, but like I forget all not Whip. What am I saying? Teleport. I forget a lot of the changes that were made to teleport back then, but I think one of them was that it has increased distance out of the corner. So even if they had walk speed, it may be a bit harder, but it's still teleport. I think it got 2 less recovery frames in one patch too.
So if Rice only has 2 different tools for Noodle free to powering, what makes Rice that much worse? Well, first, I want to take a look at Rice's combo damage when they don't have meter. Admittedly, Rice's meter damage is actually pretty good.
That juggle, not that hard to be honest. I think it was harder for me back then because execution. I was just mashing H because I knew I would just need to So this was a bit of pre-depowering Rice tech. You notice that I use a second and a slap on the very end of it. I'm What I'm trying to do is that's the max damage route. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to like mash slap and just get slap one for every single hit. But the main Rice tech you could do to get optimal damage was to do multi slap until the 8th hit, where you get the second hit slap to be the 9th hit, because SWAT was launch 9. And that was optimal damage route because slap 2 was a significant amount higher damage than slap um higher damage than slap 1. But yeah, that's just old Rice tech. That was the optimal.
And there was one meterless setup, ubiquitous to both carbs, that did a lot of damage. These were called whip loops.
And because slap 2 has higher damage, that also made the whip loops a bit, that's like a tick higher in damage. That's why I think I used the Rice whip loops and the swat loops. I think I did that with 502, I think.
And Rice could convert these whip loops into swap loops.
Yep. So this would be like kind of optimal damage. But you'll see. I didn't do the multi-slap ender. It was a bit of an I just didn't want to have to go through the execution. I just wanted to do the regular juggle. But Rice could break 600 if I did multi-slap there. Full corner carry, by the way.
Set up into whip loops was an anti-air 5-0. But what if the opponent just didn't jump? What happens to Rice's combo routes then? As you can see, Rice's main form of meterless damage comes only from confirming off of 5H. It's really hard for Rice to break 300 meterless, like every other character can do. And don't even try using a jump in starter, because it scales your combo 2 times, and it even leaves you with less damage.
That's for meterless. That's I think it actually did a bit more for the 5HHH, just the whip splash, but it actually does 4 less damage if you do a jump and starter for the SWAT ender. You don't even want to do SWAT ender anyway, not even just for the less damage, just because the minus frames. Not minus frames, what am I talking about? The distance you're put at.
Your other normal isn't doing you any favors either. 5L's maximum meterless route is 190, not counting the fact that you don't get a knockdown. And it'd be kind of fine if anti-air 5L was the only setup into whip loops, if Noodle didn't have their own meterless setup into it, with closed fist. Rice was very reliant on meter for their combo damage, but it doesn't stop there. There are much more situations in which Rice was very meter hungry.
Meter hungry. Meter hungry. Glory to the Republic.
5L has long active frames, and it can set up whip loops, so it's pretty good damaging-wise. But it loses the space jumps, so if you want a more consistent...
Look at that hitbox. That's much more different than... So this is current horizontal range, but look at this vertical range. I think it's just like a bit lower horizontal, vertically up here, but all this is like gone, which doesn't really matter, because like, I think that really only matter versus like sweep low profile, and that was around for such a short period of TLA history.
System option, your next bet is SWAT, which is theoretically pretty good since it covers the size of Texas and has long-lasting air armor. But if you actually get the anti-air connect, this happens. is actually point blank
Had to stretch
right
there.
in the opponent's face. Every character can outbox you here.
Yes, every character. I guess carbs have the exact same frame data, but you could just walk up 5L to try and interrupt and stuff. Or 5H. Um, and that got better over TLA history. Um, once SWAT was +1 with this a lot of stuff, you could actually use a SWAT as a raw anti-air in the Spice matchup because Spices had a good time spacing their jumps, so you wanted a good option to counter that. And um, because it was +1 and Spices had a bit stubby range, you could do a 5H bait by walking back. So it was just a bit better counterplay, but like, eh, you know, but I think that current SWAT is a really good implementation of like the mix-up you can enforce and a lot significant more frame advantage and cool corner juggles, which is what makes Rice a bit more cooler because Rice didn't have any like corner juggles, I don't think. Well, when multi-slap was made to not get the full mid-screen connect, it did get like a full corner connect, and that was a corner juggle, but it was pretty short, and multi-slap was removed shortly after. What was I gonna say? What was I going to say? I don't know if Rice has any other corner juggles besides the current like SWAT 5L6H, but yeah, I think that's cool. That new SWAT is a lot better than this SWAT. Lol.
Your only option for keeping this kind of remotely safe is having to spend a bar for SWAT RC, which makes this only decent as an anti-air. I mean, that's this move's purpose, right?
Yeah,
This also applies to SWAT as a combo win.
yeah. And because SWAT kind of got nerfed as an anti-air now, yeah, old SWAT, it's a move. Um, because SWAT got nerfed as an anti-air, really its main purpose now is to just be a bit of combo filler. But Paul says hopefully jump cancels will make this a bit more viable as an answer, and it has a bit better time beating space jumps than slap. Um, hopefully it gets more use. Hopefully, I would like to probably a bit shorter. Probably the air armor isn't just frame 1, but it still appears early in the move before the hitbox comes out. Um, that's just me though. I think SWAT's pretty much limited to combo filler right now, but Rice has swipe, so it's fine. Lol.
Which is why you have to use Whip Splash.
One frame
I already
difference.
mentioned that Rice's meterless damage off of 5L is bad in your combos, but this also hurt a lot in your punish scenarios. Like I said, you only get 190 and no knockdown. But even when you had a bar of meter, you still had to contend with the other card for better damage. Compare Noodle's 1 bar conversion off a 5L punish with Rice's.
Look at this. Same exact 5L punish. Look at that damage
Let's take a
differential.
step back from meter requirements at the moment. If Rice's damage was locked behind an anti-air or meter requirements, maybe Rice has a meterless string somewhere else, like pressuring the opponent's wake up. Unsurprisingly, Rice had the worst Doki in the roster. But further elaborating on this subject, joining me for this segment is fellow Tough Love Arena content creator Puzzlebox.
Let's go, Puzzlebox! Yes! Puzzlebox was the goat for helping me doing this. It was like early in, I was like, I'm gonna make a pre-depowering Rice vid. You know a lot about pre-depowering Rice. Hell, you made tier lists on pre-depowering. Lol, you wanna help me with this? And surely enough.
I'm going to be taking a back seat for this segment, so take it away, Puzzlebox.
Rice had very bad Oki. One reason for this is that Rice Rice did not have access to a safe jump after Rice's knockdown.
Okay. Ugh. Okay, I'll elaborate on this. Rice did have a safe jump. It was just like corner locked, and that wasn't hard to get off of Whip Splash because it what had amazing corner carry. Rice did get a safe jump, but I think I want what I wanted. Puzzle. You know what? I'll let the whole segment continue, and I'll elaborate then.
Most other characters had a safe jump off of the hard knockdown. Characters like Beef and Onion had good knockdown pressure with a free safe jump. The only real option Rice had was to go for a meaty whip. While it was safe, it didn't do any chip damage, and it didn't threaten any kind of a mix-up. Even
After the video.
Rice's
I mean, after the segment. I mean.
counterpart Noodle had a meaty fist setup, which was guaranteed chip damage, and there wasn't a reversal that actually beat Fizz. Rice isn't even able to use SWAT after a hard knockdown because Rice can't get into range after a hard knockdown. So in general, Rice had awful Oki in early builds of the game.
People underestimate how bad this Oki was. Okay, sure, you got a safe jump off of your 5HHH. Meats could not say that for their mid-screen stuff, even though it was a corner-locked safe jump. Even though it was a corner-locked safe jump, the problem was about Rice's safe jump is that Rice had not effective reason to do it because that was Rice up close now. And sure, it's like plus frames, but you have like very little gain in your offensive mix-ups. You strike and you just get 190, you throw, you get 200. So encountering the reversals wasn't even that big a deal back then because the opponent took a risk they could melt Rice's bar. Yeah, it's horrible. You want to know how bad Rice Oki is? Rice did not have not a single good tool for Oki. Okay, let's go through it all. 5L, really slow as a meaty. Your knockdowns are kind of limited to the corner. And even if you're able to get yourself into a situation where you can 5L as a meaty, it is not rewarding in terms of plus frames. I don't think you can meaty it to be able to link into like whip. And even if you could link it into slap. But no knockdown still. Still no knockdown. This I think reversals countered it still, unlike a lot of the other 5Ls that could just recover in time to beat like Wake Up Frenzy. Meaty Whip is the safest and by far the best Oki option that Rice has. And yet, 5 active frames, Rice could get into range after knockdowns to Meaty Whip. It was just a single poke, so... And there was no effective way for Rice to be plus in those kinds of situations, which is what meaties can be good for, making yourself plus. But Rice Oki for Meaty Whip was just, you can do it, you can commit to a 5HH frame trap, but that's horrible risk, because, not good reward. Okay, let's move on. SWAT, when are you getting in range? Corner? I don't think there's any way of making that plus either. And even then, even no matter how meaty you make swipe on SWAT on hit, you can't link anything out of it. You actually can't link anything out of it. It has the same 5 active frame issue that Whip had. It tacked on chip, but players could just easily contest that. Players very easily can contest that. What was I gonna say? Okay, let's move on. Safe jump. What I wanted Puzzle Box to say was that Beef and Onion are characters that aren't inherently aren't inherently amazing at Oki. Like that's not one of their selling points, like pork or garlic. But their safe jump setups actually really complemented them because they got amazing block pressure. They got it off good damage juggles. Onion could get it mid screen. A lot of the knockdowns that Beef and Onion could get led to a safe jump. And unlike Rice, the safe jump really helped them establish up close pressure. Rice, if you think Rice has up close pressure, you're not playing TLA. Um, and even then, Rice's safe jump couldn't even get it off of most things. So it's like top 2 Oki option for Rice. That's telling. Teleport, you lost your corner positioning for one. Okay, so you lost your corner positioning you get from whip splashing them into the corner. You can end up cornering yourself, and the risk you take is huge for if you actually lose on your mix-ups in the corner. And you couldn't get any like meaty swat or anything. You had to go with like a 50-50 mix-up between your 5L and your throw. Low damage on both accounts, no knockdown off of 5L. You're up close as Rice. Lol. It's Rice Oki is actually garbage. Garbage. And people underestimate just how bad Rice Oki was. Be glad you have meaty swipe, Rice players. Be glad. Anyway, might as well move on to the defense section. Everyone knows why Rice has bad defense.
You might be saying to your screen right now, but Ellington, Rice doesn't need great offensive options. They're a naturally defensive character. What if I told you they struggled there too?
Lol.
Here's the part of the video where I get the elephant out of the room. Teleport was the worst reversal by far. It was impossible to use against carbs, very hard to use against spices, and okay to use against meats, but you ran the risk of eating a lemon loop or a chop loop.
Which, to be fair, did limit beef and pork's mid-screen conversions, because otherwise they would get 5H5 to 5H6 test in the corner. If they baited a frenzy, they would be able to get that. If they baited the teleport, all they get is like 5H8 6S. But that's all they get. But what was I gonna say? Yeah, this was the risk. This damage of the super damaging lemon loops and chop loops. Crazy.
And it got even harder to use against cross-ups.
I think this was mainly a thing for in the Garlic Guide, is that you can cross up teleport to make sure Rice just has no great reversal. If they use it, they corner themselves. And if they don't use it, they just are at the mercy of Garlic's plus frames. I think that's actual like tech in the Garlic Guide. And it still is like that.
Unironically, I think your best defensive option was just using burst. And this also tied into why Rice was very meter hungry. You use burst and you lost your coverage to your meterless weaknesses, but you try to cover your meterless weaknesses and you lose burst. What gives?
If I wanted to rephrase that now, I'd probably say, because bad defense is a meterless weakness, and you needed burst to cover that. So I guess I'd rephrase it to like, if you use burst, you lost access to your RC, which makes your SWAT unsafe, which makes your meterless damage, which makes your damage really low, which makes SWAT unsafe as an anti-air, which makes most of your combo enders unsafe, which makes your punishes way worse. So if you really want to risk it, you had to risk something. And if you wanted to RC, you lost your defense. But generally, RC was the better option because Burst was still easily baitable. So it's not even like Rice had like amazing defense, because Burst was still baitable. And that was horrible for Rice. Yeah, it's bad. it gets really bad. The rabbit hole goes deeper than what I covered in this vid.
Having a lack of a reversal hurt Rice not only against pressure, but also against RPS mix-ups. On that note, let's talk about Rice's mix-ups for a second. As you can imagine, Rice's mix-ups were pretty awful. Even on a right read, Rice's were
plus 32 for plus 32 for for burst. I think. Yeah, because that's like the launch angle. Probably you recover 32 frames before the opponent is able to get up after the knockdown. Yeah. All it was a neutral reset.
turns were so little. 190 on jab with no knockdown and 200 on throw.
No secret that Rice has bad defensive mix-ups. At least now they're a bit better since Rice could do 5LH and is still safe up close while doing 40 chip. But yeah, it's like it was worse, far worse back in the day.
And this is more of a pet peeve of mine than anything, but Rice didn't get a standing kick throw after jab.
Yeah. I don't know if the meat struggled with this. I think the meats and spices because they had just had standardized pushback on their 5Ls. I think because they had standardized pushback, they still got a standing kick throw, and they had actually walk speed to chase down and throw. But yeah, throw range. I like the change of non-universal throw range.
Most characters could just backwalk out of this mix-up and Rice would just lose pressure.
Which frankly, you might be thinking, that's beneficial for Rice. Oh, plus 27? Oh, okay. Yeah. I think that's what it would be, yeah. Alright, I definitely am gonna upload the VOD to YouTube. It's reaching like 3 hours right now, which is probably longer than my Spam Hate Arena VOD. But I'll see if I can just do, I'll see if I can highlight the character overlap vid and send that to YouTube, maybe. And maybe I'll upload some other VODs on top of that. Like maybe the interview commentary or whatever. I'll see what I can do. But thanks for being here, Squid Slash. Anyway. Now let's watch the video.
Noodle had about the same weaknesses when it came to these mix-ups, but at least Noodle had Frenzy to cover strike. And when neither Carb had meter, the differences in their mix-ups became a lot more absurd. Rice got complemented by a bit more damage and a knockdown of a 5L, but Noodle got a close fist conversion off of both 5L and Frenzy.
$375. Funny enough, this didn't just apply to Frenzy on the ground. I really wanted to say this as like pre-depowering tech, but for Noodle, you can do the chop anti-air strat of catching their landing frames. You can, which is probably easier since you have more time to react and it's faster startup than chop. But you can do the same chop anti-air landing punish with this Frenzy and get a close fist conversion. So Noodle's anti-airs were really good too.
The opponent's win condition on Rice was to make their way past 5/8 and SWAT. And when that happened, Rice sucked at dealing with up-close pressure and had no good reversal to back it up.
Mm-hmm.
Rice's defense was pretty awful. This last point I'm going to bring up is pretty abstract, but it's a good talking point in how Rice played neutral. Rice's biggest weakness, in my opinion, was a lack of a tool that didn't even exist yet.
You could argue that a lack of a tool isn't even a real con of a character. Like, in a vacuum, I guess. But we're comparing... But I think for this video, I think it's important to know that we are comparing the present to the past. And the past is, you can definitely see that Rice is held back because Swipe is not there. And that really hurts Rice's neutral, which is supposed to be a really strong point for Rice. And which got better because of Swipe and other stuff. But
One thing that I can credit to Rice is that their neutral wasn't terrible, but you can definitely see where they started to struggle. Their main neutral play was with 5H, and sometimes they could sneak into future sight. But again, for Rice being so meter hungry, it held its wrist.
It was, when I first saw Future Sight, I was just like, is this even a worth RC? Because if you could react to the startup of Jump, you could also react to just Jump in general. If you're looking for it, why would you waste your meter and just make your punishes worse? Why would you make your anti-airs worse? Why would you make your damage worse? Just so you can try and bait an option you could already bait. But I mean, it's cool, I guess.
Also, because of 5H having worse block safety and all walk speeds were higher, it was much more easy to mic rock in on.
Yeah, Spices could really outbox the Carbs with their sweep. They outframe data and they outspeed. People don't talk about Spice walk speed and pre-depowering enough. It was stupid. But anyway, yeah. Rice and Noodle kind of really got outboxed by Onion because of the walk speed and encroaching on their poking space. But and that's probably 1 second.
Zoning was a lot less threatening than it was worse on a lot of metrics. It was +1 on hit and -7 on block. The returns on hit were so mediocre since there was no possible link from it and you can't RC it. I'm not even kidding when I say that's the best you get from it.
Yep, can't mediate. Can't mediate either.
That's why most players just use it as a chipping tool and mix it up with SWAT cancels. But in both cases, it was pretty easy to challenge. There was one block string into it with 5HHS. But it was very fake unless you spaced it. And even then, it was an 8-frame gap, so if Spices buffered sweep, spacing it didn't work at all.
Look at that damage off a meterless punish. Yeah, look at that damage. Anyway, I wouldn't be saying this thing about the sweep punishing this fake-ass block string, but I was reviewing old pre-powering sets, and I was seeing Busy do this consistently in, like, the Meep sets. And Busy was knowing that even if that were a SWAT cancel or a regular SWAT, I have enough good reactions to be able to sweep punish this. It could be a matter of reactions, but even on a read, I feel like this is still viable.
I remember this anecdote in particular from the group that says if you just walk forward versus SWAT, the best Rice can hope for is being +1 and taking 1 under damage. But Rice had positioning disadvantage, which was overall worse. Having a life lead on Rice made this super consistent of an anti-SWAT option. Rice had to resort to using 5H here. Having the risky neutral option of SWAT, as well as the easier counterplay of Whip, made Rice's neutral very volatile. Compared to New Rice, which because of the addition of Swipe, solves about every single issue I've talked about in this segment, even with some added benefits like meaty Swipe after knockdowns and having a better way to counter reversals.
I could see if I can double check if that covers every single thing I talked about in that segment. So, fake ass block strings, they're not really fake. They're just they are frame traps, but it's not as easily challengeable. Me swipe helps Rice's Oki pretty much. Come on. SWAT cancels, they were pretty fake and neutral. the best you get from SWAT was that 100 damage, but if you walk in on a swipe, uh, if it were up close, Rice now can link out of it or can RC that swipe to get a full conversion off it, which gave the risk of a knockdown and a lot more damage. So, yeah, I think it's everything in this segment. -4. That was on its what? Uh, fourth active frame.
Alright, here's my brief synopsis.
I love this meme. I love this meme so much.
This is me switching from factual analysis Ellington to real talk Ellington. This is mostly just my opinion. I'll give Rice the benefit of the doubt here, because if I'm being honest, every character's neutral wasn't great either. Noodles was only better by a tiny amount, but nothing significant. It was only when characters actually won neutral where they really got to shine, such as Onion getting a whiff punish, Pork getting an approach, and Garlic getting a knockdown. I think this was in part why Rice couldn't keep up with the meta. Rice's neutral wins were too meaningful without meter, and their neutral losses really hurt. Rice was unequipped for dealing with the meta in comparison to Noodle, who had good walling to stuff approaches and a great tool to set up whiff loops. It's funny how a character that is meant to be great in neutral fits perfectly in footsie-based fighting games. But pre-defiring was not as much footsie-based as it was vortex-based.
And yet, people still have nostalgia over it. Guaranteed, if people optimize their setups a lot more, and depowering just didn't happen, if depowering didn't happen and pre-depowering was still the meta today, guaranteed people would hate it. People would hate it. They just don't want to admit it because they think that TLA right now is just an unfun mess. You want to see unfun. I want you to go against Hop Kick Low Crush. You want unfun. Whew. Okay.
Noodle outclassed Rice in consistent damage, neutral, Oki, up close mix-up, defense, and consistent anti-airs. Was there anything that Rice was better at than Noodle? Actually? Yeah.
The whole thing of me going through what Noodle was better at. Yeah. That was just like, if that didn't show how much Noodle really outclassed Rice. I'm so grateful for modern TLA.
For one, Rice actually got better reward off of 5H than Noodle. Noodle typically conserved meter for their 5H conversions, but when Rice had it, Rice also had the threat of SWAT loops in their back pocket, which made Whiff a bit scarier of a poke to go against, and that was great for it being easy to hit confirm and counter poke with. Rice's access to SWAT loops also meant they had higher damage conversions than Noodle. While Noodle had consistent damage, Rice's instantaneous damage broke 600, and they were actually better at making comebacks than Noodle. Even though it was locked behind an anti-air, that's still really good on a character that makes you want to jump in neutral. 600 is on par with the meats and onion damage, and unlike them, Rice's max damage ender wasn't even corner locked. Another thing was that Rice had a bit better instantaneous space coverage. I talk a lot about how SWAT is generally very committal, but it can also be good at stuffing certain approaches. Without SWAT, Hopkick becomes a lot more abusable in the matchup. Some Rices actually chose to just SWAT cancel the neutral despite the commitment, just so that they can stuff certain approaches from meat jump-ins and hop kicks. You'll actually see this a lot in old pre-depowering sets with meat versus Waddle and meat versus Busy Darn. New Rice absolutely is a huge improvement on the character. What weaknesses did stick over Tough Love Arena's lifespan?
Oh, fuck, I got to Fook. Fuck, I forgot to make commentary. It's mainly, I think, TLG 17 and TLG something, where, man, I think mainly TLG 16, 17-ish, where Busy was steamrolling a lot of the TLGs, and, where Busy was really steamrolling, and, man, I wish I had, like, specific sets to point to, but it would be, like, full VODs instead of player-specific VODs. That's the thing that Smash does better than TLA, is that you can find player-specific, character-specific VODs just by looking up character, just by looking them up, but for TLA, you just had to, I guess, go off patch. So, if I find some, might put it in the description or something. I don't know.
Price absolutely is a huge improvement on the character. What weaknesses did stick over Tough Love Arena's lifespan was his character design choices that fit the zoner archetype that the carbs adhere to. I just thought pre-depowering Rice was an interesting case study in character overlap and how that affects a character's viability. It was a mistake, but an important mistake that we can all learn from. And in the end, Tough Love Arena was no less fun of a game then. I'd like to thank Paul, the head dev of Tough Love Arena, for giving me special access to the pre-depowering patch. Labbing for this bid and gathering footage could not have been possible without his contribution. I'd also like to thank Puzzlebox, who I've been meaning to collaborate with for a long time, and who also has great knowledge on pre-depowering Tough Love Arena. I hope you enjoyed the vid. You can subscribe to the channel for more Tough Love Arena content, and if you felt I left anything out, feel free to let us all know in the comments. This is Ellington Reborn signing out. Peace.
Peace. Okay. So I did actually get something I left out in the comments. It was right here. It was right here. It was Puffball saying teleport after whip splash. I covered that in commentary, but yeah, basically I did not watch this. What? I did not watch Art of Kirby. Anyway, yeah, I covered it all in a brief synopsis, kind of here, but I already explained it in this commentary vid, and I will upload the VOD of me covering like this whole segment. I think just the segment alone.